Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to OSW Daily, Open Source Workplace Daily, almost daily live stream here on YouTube, on Facebook, and wherever else you may be watching. So what is OSW Daily? We bring you the key topics that people are talking about today, basically headlines, articles that are making us think, and today curious about what's actually going to be the future of work. So it's all things related to work, workplace, employee experience, workplace productivity. I'm here with my co-host, Mike Petresky, who is also the host of the Workplace Innovator podcast. And I'm Steve Todd, founder of Open Source Workplace. Mike, well done. Hello and welcome. How is your Monday? How was your weekend?
Well done. That's the best intro you've ever done because I didn't interrupt you that time.
Well, there's many things. Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well done.
Appreciate it.
My weekend was great. I enjoyed it a lot. I am, a little grumpy this morning.
I know.
It's a Monday. I got a bad case of the Mondays. And I don't know. It's just going to be another one of those weeks. But, we're going to grind it out. We're going to stay optimistic. And hopefully you're going to inspire me to get going. So let's check in with my mental status at the end of this half hour together.
All right.
Always on the rise. Always.
Good.
How was your weekend?
My weekend was great. Yeah, it was really good. I had Friday off, so I spent some time doing a little bit of additional exercise, even though Friday was not that good weather-wise here in New York. I really enjoyed the weekend, actually. And what I found really interesting was on Sunday, without really realizing it, I did a bunch of work. And it was one of those ones where obviously my brain must have felt very fresh from the couple of days off, a little bit of exercise, and I sort of let me just check on one thing. Wow. And then 2 hours later I'm like boom in the middle of stuff. So it was good. You
got into the groove.
I
was not working yesterday. I was lying on a sofa watching baseball. MLB is back. The last time we talked, we hadn't talked yet. It was Thursday night, was opening night. Max Scherzer took the mound. Here he is. Max did so good, but then didn't do so good. The Yankees beat us 2 out of 3 this weekend, Steve. I don't know if you saw any of the
I did not.
Debut of Major League Baseball.
I did not. But I have to confess, like if I ever need a good nap, I put it on,
Baseball's the sport for you.
Exactly.
I wanted to share with you real quickly. I know you've been watching your football, soccer, European football, and you mentioned to me, for the last month or two when they've been doing this, they pipe in the crowd noise to kind of simulate the experience.
Yeah.
They did a great job. And it's different depending on the network you watch. I watched ESPN, I watched MLB on Fox, and I watched my local MASN, Mid-Atlantic Sports Network over the weekend. And each did it a little differently, and some are better than others. I think Fox has it down. The Fox Sports team was piping in the sound effects and making it sound like there were really fans there, and it was really interesting to watch. I mean, have they done a good job with the soccer?
They have. And what they've done over time, I think, is try to adjust the sound level of the noise, the fans. Because what people ideally want is there's benefits of not having the fans' noise there because you hear the players on the pitch a lot clearer, right? You hear instructions coming from the bench. You hear the cheers, all the rest of it. When they pipe in a lot of sound from fans, whatever, that gets muted a little bit. So they've lowered that and increased the volume of the players, and they've actually kind of at the end they got it perfect where you could hear both and feel both. It was pretty good. It's nowhere near the same as obviously having fans there.
Right.
But
it made me forget. It made me forget as I was looking at all those empty seats. It kind of distracts you.
Yeah.
But there is an art to it. So we'll see if they could perfect that. But maybe that's a future career path for some.
I would have thought though in baseball though, as long as it's quiet, you've probably got the perfect sound stadium. All you need is people chewing on food or peanuts cracking or
It is cool to hear the sound of the bat more and hear the players talking to each other.
Yeah.
But there's something eerie when you hear that PA announcer announce in the stadium with that echo with no absorption of sound. It really was creepy. So that they needed to fix, and they did a good job with it. So I was just glad to see live sports that meant something, even though it's a shortened season, all that. It's something I wasn't excited about, but
yeah.
now that it's back, I'm glad it is.
It's a great point, and I love that the soccer is back, and it gives something to watch. So yeah, I totally agree with you. All right, folks. So sorry we went on here for a little 5 or 6 minutes talking about sports, and that's not obviously what you're here to watch or here to listen to. So our apologies if you've jumped in and sort of jumped and bolted and already. So
already tuned out.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So if you've hung around, please do give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and help YouTube's algorithms find us, and if you find this beneficial. So what are we going to talk about today? We have a bunch of stuff, and one of the main thing I want to talk about today, Mike, it's do you get bored?
Yes. When?
Yeah, no. So this is a question, and this is where this came to me. There was an article I was reading over the weekend, and it's called Five Habits of Incredibly Curious People. Now, curious people, I always ask the question when I'm interviewing people, be it, for a job or whether I'm sort of chatting through or getting to know people. I always like to know what they're curious about, because curious people have fantastic attributes, and this article is talking about it. And the reason why I asked if you get bored, curiosity cures boredom. Because if you're bored about something, there's always ways to navigate around that by digging more, learning more, and sort of thinking through things. I like to think deeply. I like to write down questions. I like to ponder what those questions are, and then go and try and search out results. And I just find this really, really curious. Now, obviously, the 5 habits I talk about, I've only put a few on the screen, but in essence, curious people ask better questions. They take calculated risks. In other words, they're going to evaluate by asking all those different questions, getting all that information. They eliminate boredom, which is why I sort of set you up a little bit there. They're lifelong learners. In other words, they always want to continue to develop, right? Learn new things, learn new ways to do stuff, open to meeting new people to bring out new ideas to them. And they're self-motivated. Yep. And that's why people always laugh at me when I ask, part of an interview series is what are people curious about? My peers or colleagues may ask, why are you asking people this? Because I think the more different types of people you bring to the team, and if you bring people who are self-motivated, who are lifelong learners, that do ask a lot of questions, then it only enhances the thing of the team, the strength of the team. Now, the big thing is when you ask those questions, there are those people who ask great questions, but then they don't take action on the answers they receive. They don't document the answers they receive. They don't allow those answers to sort of fermentate and sort of alter or adjust their mindset a little bit. Because I think we have to take all this information in and sort of just think it through, I think, and let those opinions evolve. Because if we look at what everyone's going through today, right, opinions are coming left, right, and center. The viewpoints are changing. And what we think the future will be will ever change as well. So I think a curious mindset and understanding those habits, I think, is a great thing. So my apologies if I set you up a little bit there, Mike.
No worries. No, but you said some great things there. The article was very interesting to me, and of course they mentioned Einstein and Isaac Newton and all the great innovators and inventors, people who had curious minds. That was demonstrated through their creativity and their inventions and so forth. And what moves us forward as human beings is the ability to imagine things that we don't currently have. And that certainly is the case today in these unknown times of the workplace during a pandemic. We have to be creative and open to those ideas. You mentioned all the different things that are potentially negative about, curiosity. If you ask the questions and you don't listen, what about just not allowing people to express themselves, or people not having a culture in which they feel free to express their opinions or even ask the questions? That's the concern I have, because I know that many of us, and this is, I think, something in the U.S. culture especially, I'm curious, it was when you grew up in the U.K., did you feel free to ask a lot of questions in school, or was it discouraged? Was it more a place where the information was fed to you, this is what you need to know, and then there was almost, even if it wasn't explicit, there was a feeling of, I don't want to ask a question because I don't want to stand out. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to ask a dumb question. All those things are more of our natural default setting as people, because we don't want to stand out in many ways. So those that are willing to put those feelings aside, be comfortable being uncomfortable, offer some, questions or opinions that are outside the status quo, those are the ones that make progress. But I think many of us, it's a fight to do that. It's against our better nature to do that. And I think we should encourage that in especially today's environment.
Thank you for sharing that, Mike, because it's really important, and it's a really good distinction. And, whenever you said that, I've sort of went back to my behaviors in a sense of, I'm not that person in a room of 15, 20 people who will ask questions. I'm not that person. I am the person who sits there quiet, who listens, ponders.
Okay.
One-on-one situations are, in groups of 3 or 4, small little groups with people I know and trust, or one-on-one with people who I'm getting to know. I will ask questions and I will answer any question that's given to me. So I think it's an important distinction and clarification that you did mention. Yeah, I'm not that person that in a large room will be the big talker or ask a lot of questions, unless it's I'm holding the meeting and it's my meeting. That's obviously I take on a different role. But
you feel the responsibility. And when you're here, obviously you're doing these type of interviews. We're forced to do it, or if you have a guest on. But think about those Zoom meetings with 12, 20, 30 people where the host of the meeting will ask a question or put out a topic for conversation, and it's crickets. It's like there's 30 people here. Somebody's got an idea. Somebody wants to say something. But I think there's something about, our human nature that keeps us from doing it. And it takes some thoughtfulness to bring that out of people or to get us past those hurdles and therefore create a environment in which we have this opportunity to really be free to share our ideas, be free to be wrong. I think that's the thing. Just say, hey, there's no wrong answer here. There's no bad question here. Let's give people the freedom to put themselves out there and not. That's that psychological safety idea, right?
Mm-hmm. No, it is, and you also mentioned another great thing that actually what took me back to something that our good friend Dusty Diestemars actually he told me, and he noted a couple of years ago to me. He says, there's a lot of really smart people. There's a lot of really senior folks who really want to ask questions, but they fear that in asking the questions, they may look vulnerable, or they may not look as intelligent as what they probably are. So in other words, in an environment, you just take the example where if someone's in a Zoom call, webinar, they ask a question, their name's going to pop up. I know if you knew me, you would say, oh, Steve's just asked this question because you know it. But at the same time, I may be like, well, I don't want to answer the question, because then the perception of the audience may be, I'm surprised he's asking that question. Why doesn't he know the answer to that? Right. So there's a lot of fear in that. And but it's a very good thing. And I'm glad you raised it there, Mike.
I love Dusty. I'm glad you brought him up. He was on my podcast a couple times. He's been on my live stream. I've done a webinar with him. I did a webinar with Dusty where he pulled out his guitar and started playing a song with unique lyrics that he wrote. The guy's very talented beyond his workplace expertise. Great guest, great guy, and always good to hear that name, Dusty Diestemars.
Brilliant him.
And the idea, we could go on with this, but I love the idea of creating an environment, a place where that open exchange can take place, and people feel free to ask even silly questions. I've done it. I've asked questions where later on I'm like, that was a dumb question, Mike. If you had just been listening to what was said 10 minutes before or 5 minutes before, you would have known the answer. But it's okay. I think that's the thing. Being vulnerable. You mentioned the word vulnerable is something that I find is incredibly comforting, especially today when you have these interactions and everybody's got their fears and their worries. If a leader is someone who's willing to put themselves out there, say, I don't know all the answers. I can't give you the future. We can't predict the future. No one can, but we can work together and keep that, that vision of optimism and the path we're headed down, map it out for everybody, and then adjust along the way. And we're going to get through this together. That type of leadership is what we're really desperate for.
No, it is. And sort of I guess the key thing that I think we want to take away from this, Mike, is, if we hear that voice in the back of our head going, I'm bored, well, just use that as a trigger to go, well, what am I curious about? What do I want to learn? And what can I then go and, be it pick up a book, pick up a video, whatever it is, to sort of get ourselves away from that boredom. Because in these times, with everything that's going on in the industry that we love and the organizations that we care about, there are so much things that we can do right now to actually eliminate any level of boredom. I guess it's kind of where
absolutely, yeah. And I hate to give the last word on your last word, but it's something I can't help myself. We both want to share these great ideas, but this thought of boredom kind of would indicate to me that someone is being passive, being waiting for someone to give them direction. And that's something we can't do. We need to be proactive. We need to take a risk. And if you find yourself bored, waiting for instruction, waiting for your manager or your boss or your leadership team to tell you what's next, then take that as a wake-up call, a warning sign. Then say, what can I do proactively? Take a risk, as you said, come up with something creative, throw an idea out there, just kind of put it into the mix, and hopefully people will respond to it, and you be the one to get that ball rolling. That's my suggestion.
It's great, and I want to respond to you, but I'm going to move on because we could be going here for a long time because there's so much to say. But please do go take a look at the article. It's fantastic. So Mike, the next thing we want to talk about is AI, and how AI is going to be a benefit to so many people, and in many ways. And I came across this yesterday, and this is what I was talking about earlier, about one of these things where you read and you go into this spiral, and all of a sudden you don't realize that you're shooting emails and you're actually reading and digging more. And this is one that sort of got me going, because I believe in time AI is going to allow employers to better recruit, develop, and retain talent. I also believe, though, that those people who are looking for jobs, AI is going to help them choose better companies and managers to work for. And I find this article fascinating in a sense that they're using AI to come up with a sentiment, but also through the words people use in response to a chatbot question, it's going to be able to tell employers whether an individual is going to be a job hopper or not. Now, a job hopper, as we think about with the millennials and we think about that workforce coming through, right, all indications show that population is going to jump from job to job to job, because their whole mentality is, I've got to learn as much as I can, as fast as I can. The more I know, the more I understand, and the more valuable I'm going to be later in my career. So they want to do a lot of job hopping, and they have no issues taking a job. And in 6 months, if the job isn't living up to their expectations, or their organization isn't living up to their values, or the manager they don't think the manager is going to be invested in them and developing their career, they're happy to jump. So I find it really interesting that this is an AI bot that is able to do this. And on the back of this, I did reach out to the CEO of the company, and I've started a dialogue, and I'm hoping to sort of get them involved in Open Source Workplace in the future, because I think we have to be bringing so many different things to the table. And we think about Open Source Workplace, what it is there to do. This is not just real estate. Workplace is HR, it's future technologies, it's technology, it is corporate real estate, it's just everything. So sure. I got fascinated with this, and I don't know what your view is on AI helping organizations identify people who are going to be job hopping, and I do have thoughts, but I sort of want to take a moment and let you give some feedback.
Well, I get concerned when I read some of these articles. I'm all for technology. I'm all for AI. I want to leverage that tool to help us make better decisions, faster decisions based on more data, things that human beings can't do on their own. I'm all in favor of that type of technology. But the way this article talked a lot about employers using AI through the interview process to kind of pre-screen candidates in a way, and maybe I misread this, but the takeaway for me at least potentially was you could screen out people who might be troublemakers, might be those job hoppers you want to avoid, or might be someone who's in favor of unionizing, I think was one of the examples that I read. And I wonder if that is using the tool for the wrong purpose. I think there's definitely value in getting a sense of a person, making sure it's a good match, make sure they're aligned philosophically, can bring them along with the mission. But if your culture is one where you're just like trying to get people who are less potentially going to want to hop jobs, or someone who is going to be passive and just not assertive and not willing to disrupt the status quo, you're going to have a pretty boring company, to get back to our last conversation. So I don't know. The danger to me was that the AI could be used as kind of a suppression type of thing to eliminate people, in a sense that that's always a bad thing. Again, if you're trying to match people with the right opportunity, the right culture, let's use it for that good. But if you're trying to just suppress people who are assertive and maybe want to learn, and you're not prepared as an employer to give them the career path they need, maybe that's something that you need to evaluate as an organization.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. And I think one of the things that they identified was an outcome was the ability to eliminate bias. So if you are an employee, you're a hiring manager, and you wanted to change, you want to create a more diverse background or a more diverse organization, then this could help you do that too. So it was one of the potential outcomes, and I sort of read this as this is the first step, I think, in a way where probably this organization can use AI to really help organizations. And I almost think, I don't know what the 5 questions are, but you think about what we just talked about before. Just imagine if one of those questions is, what are you curious about? Right? In simply stating what you're curious about, what your mindset is, the organization is going to be able to find a lot. And then if I suspect that the AI bot is going to be able to determine the key words, the key triggers that are actually going to show you your resiliency, your mindset, your openness to change, your creativity, whatever that is. And I think there are many, many outcomes. And to be honest, if we think that as an individual you're applying for that and you therefore don't get through that screening process, well, you have to think of it as a benefit to you, because the AI, the whole point, I think, of this AI is to find a more suitable candidate for the company's objectives. And if you don't fit that, then I think while you may get turned down, that's maybe a benefit to you in the long term, where if you are successful, then it's obviously a huge benefit to you because your values are aligned with that hiring company.
Like any tool, it's a neutral technology.
Yep.
It could be good, used for good or used for ill. And I am all on board with using new technology tools in a positive way.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Cool. All right. So this one is really interesting. And we've talked about in the past, Mike, about we don't know what the future looks like. We don't know what the future of work looks like. We don't know what the workplace of the future or how offices will be. And I find this interesting. We've looked at a few indicators that we've spoke about that actually there are underlying factors we can look for, even though we don't know what the answer is to what the future of work is, what the future of workplace is. We've talked in the past about how people are migrating and leaving big cities. This is a piece of information that came out regarding the net absorption rate of office space in New York City. And it's down 5 million square feet. So what does that mean? That means space that is occupied through Q2 2020 dropped 5 million square feet. So that means people are occupying less square footage. Now, what does that tell us in a number of things? One, organizations or people are not leasing space. They're reducing their square footage. They're delaying decisions. And there's also obviously more pipeline of space coming on. So we think about the additional space that's coming on in Hudson Yards, down at World Trade Center, and other new buildings that are going up. So this tells us as well that a lot of organizations are reluctant to take the risk of what that workplace is going to be, especially in New York City. I don't know what it's saying about other cities because I haven't really dug into that information. But this article is looking, okay, so if that's the case, and organizations are taking less square footage, how then can property owners provide services to future tenants? How can they make themselves more appealing, and what are the strategies that they can use? And the article goes on to explain that one's potential strategy is to look at flexible space. So as a property owner, can you create flexible space within your building to make yourself more appealing to future tenants? So organizations are reluctant to take on huge leases for large periods of time. So therefore, do you take that space that you were going to offer to one tenant? Do you create flexible space for that office space, and then lease it on a daily or a shorter period to a number of tenants in the form of flexible space? Now, it's something that I heard a while back from Andrew Siegel of Boxer Property in one of the interviews I did for Open Source Workplace. This was something that he said that he saw an opportunity in, and him through his Stemmons Technology, the company he helped co-found, they do that within Boxer Property, and that's a strategy that he's been evolving and developing over time. And I think it's a really interesting perspective and a really interesting opportunity for property owners.
Yeah, wow, this one's over my head, Steve, and your expertise and as a real estate leader, and Andrews and others that you talk to, those are the ones that we need to lean on for this, because this is a tough time. All I'll say is I don't envy those in positions of decision making around real estate decisions, because so many are often long-term decisions that have long-term consequences, and you're working with limited information, limited data. People just we just don't know. We don't know what the future holds. And that was my takeaway here, is that, boy, there are as many scenarios as you can map out. Do we need more space to be able to de-densify, or do we need less space because more people will be working away from the physical office? It's tough. It is tough. And we can't predict the future. I know there's people who have ideas, and these models are beginning to come together based on the Q2 data and so forth, but I just don't envy those in a position to making a decision for their corporation, or if they're in the business of real estate. Other than, again, just to tie it to what we talked about earlier, we have to be creative, we have to be innovative, ask a lot of questions, be curious, try to anticipate, and be flexible. That's the key. Be flexible, and if flexibility literally means creating more flexible spaces available to different organizations, that may be the solution, because we may need to change. We may need to adjust on a dime this fall when the second wave of COVID hits. We may need to, adjust next year and in the coming years. It's going to be a very, very interesting time.
It is absolutely. And I think the sort of theme that if we had to put a theme on a number of the topics we've talked about recently, is, and I think it was sort of said, is the only certain thing is uncertainty, right? We don't know what the future is. We don't know what it is. So we have to do all we can at the moment to really allow ourselves to prepare for that future. And flexibility is certainly one of the key things that we need to do. So I wanted to talk on something. So this is a new technology that I came across, and it's specifically been developed for cars. And it is a touchscreen that you don't have to touch. It sort of is predictive in a sense of, it's going to learn how you interact with a screen. You don't have to touch it. And I when I read this first, I was like, huh? I says, it's hard enough to touch a screen when you're driving and get it right. Never mind not touch a screen, but try to get it right. But then it's basically what it's saying. It's going to learn what you do, your typical habits, and then from there they think they can get to a point where at the moment it's up 50% on your interaction time with it, and it's going to help. It's going to help people who are driving. Now, we're talking about workplace. Why does this matter? Well, in essence, if we're able to get to a place where we have a technology that is able to be a touchscreen that you don't have to touch, you think about all the work surfaces. You think about, your company iOffice has just bought a Teams platform that basically creates, a conference room and the little screens. And if they're able to take that technology and you're able to create a pad that you don't have to touch, but it gives everyone the ability to a visual representation of an office, and you're able to book stuff without touching it. I think that's a really useful application of a technology like this. You think about as you think about kiosks as we come into buildings, right? In the future, okay, you don't want to touch the actual surface, but if you're able to check in, you're able to go find a desk and hot desk, and you can see so many applications on a visual screen that is a touch screen, but you don't have to touch. And you can see that playing a lot into the real estate workplace industry.
Totally. And that's the philosophical point there, is one that is certainly of value. The less we have to touch common surfaces, the better, especially now that we're hyper aware of germs and we're trying to keep ourselves safe. The idea that that's something that we've embraced at iOffice. We want to use people's personal devices to interact with their workplace as much as possible, because at least their personal device, although our phones are filthy and disgusting based on our touching it, at least we're the only ones touching it, or should be the only ones touching it at that point. But these common interfaces are something that I can see this new technology being very valuable for. And it looks a little clunky right now as far as the Jaguar commercial, but I can see it getting to the point where we're into this future, like, was it Tom Cruise in that sci-fi movie Minority Report? Yeah, where all the visuals are up on the screen and he's waving his hands and he's kind of touching and flinging things. That's the thing we're looking at here, right? If we can get to a point where technology allows that level of sensitivity and we can figure out as humans how to use it, which I'm sure the next generation, what's after Gen Z? We're going to go back to Gen A, the new the new generation will be so used to these kind of gestures and stuff, it'll be really easy for them. But it's pretty cool to see a world in which we don't need to touch so much, and certainly in today's hyper-aware pandemic life, it would be something we'd all find value in.
It is. So there we go, Mike. We went through these 4 articles, and you were laboring this morning as we started. Are you still laboring? Are you still laboring at the end?
Already out of my mind.
There you go, man.
Off to a good start now, Steve.
There you go.
You did it again, my friend. There you go. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it. I'm here for you, Mike.
Lots of flair on. I started, as far as the Office Space references go, I started with a case of the Mondays. Now I'm wearing extra flair on my vest. Do you know that reference? I'll tell you about it later.
Okay, I look forward to extra flair. There you go. I just think flair. I just think of flary trousers. That's what I think about, man.
That's right.
All right.
Well, thanks for putting it together.
Thanks for joining, everybody. Thank you for everybody for taking the time. And if you made it all the way through, well done. I'm glad you're very curious, and I'm glad you've stuck with this. And so give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Have a great day. Take care.